Welcome to 5TN. I'm your host, Dr. Yavuz Selim Silay. I want to first and foremost thank you to our viewers. 5TN has become one of the most viewed technology news shows in Africa. And I want to thank you for your really strong view and your engagement through our WhatsApp number, social media, and YouTube. I really want to thank you for your sincere interaction at this time. As I mentioned, we are really thrilled to give you the best 5 technology news. Here, I have very good 5 news for you. The first one is about YouTube. Do you know that YouTube actually surpassed cable TV in advertisement revenue? So YouTube is actually bringing more and more money to their investors. Our second news is about artificial intelligence. Should an AI self-driving automobile kill the baby or the grandma? What a shocking question. Actually, it depends on where you're from. Our third news is about a very interesting concept of quantum entanglement. Over 30 miles of fiber has brought super secure internet closer. So we are talking about security of technology. Now there are ways that actually make the internet more secure through using quantum entanglement over 30 miles of fiber. Our fourth news is about Citroën. As you know, the Citroën brand is a very important one, and Citroën is introducing a 2-seat e-vehicle that costs only $19.99 a month. And our last news is about emissions possible. Streaming music actually swells carbon footprints. So how to look into the emissions and how to make sure the streaming music can actually swell the carbon footprints. With these 5 news, I want to really start with our very first exciting news about YouTube. Do you know that YouTube surpassed the cable TV ad in revenue? For the first time ever, Alphabet has revealed how much the company makes from YouTube advertising. The company's 3 years of revenue figures shows that the numbers have risen from $8.15 billion in 2017 to $11.16 billion in 2018, and finally, a shocking number of $15.15 billion in 2019. So from 8 billion to 15 billion from 2017 to 2019, more than or close to double. So this represents an 86% growth in revenue stream over that time. This rise has also resulted in YouTube advertisements accounting for 9.4%, ladies and gentlemen. And of the 9.4% of the company's total revenue. So this reveal is very important because it shows just how much more money YouTube is actually making for Google when compared with traditional cable TV. Ad revenue numbers from 2018 actually shows that NBC made a total of $7 billion, and CBS made $6 billion, and Fox made a measly, by comparison, $5 billion. So this makes YouTube a titan among media competitors, with 2 billion monthly users and 250 hours of video watched per day. Despite the immense revenue stream coming in from YouTube, it's likely that most of system to pay content creators who show these ads on their videos. As you know, content is the king, right? So still, the Alphabet CEO, Sundar Pichai, is optimistic. He is saying there is significantly more room on YouTube monetization levels. So YouTube's success should be a no surprise to anyone who has been paying attention to digital advertisement revenue trends over the last few years. Revenue for digital ads in the United States passed the $100 billion threshold for the first time in 2018. And since digital advertisement dollars matched TV in 2016 and actually surpassed traditional media spending. So I was really interested in the YouTube's ascension, and I clearly see that YouTube's ascension, ladies and gentlemen, was just a matter of time. And that's why nowadays people are focusing more and more YouTube, and I want you to also interact through Natural TV's YouTube channel. Follow our YouTube channel for Natural TV, and make sure to also interact with us through our WhatsApp number, and make sure you leave your 1-minute video about technology news in Africa. When you look at YouTube's parent company, Google is the primary reason Alphabet has been so successful. So it's really worth, ladies and gentlemen, wondering how much more successful the conglomerate will be if advertisement revenue and monetization levels continue to rise. Our second news is about artificial intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, artificial intelligence is very important. It's being used also now in automobile industry about self-driving cars where infrastructure is ready. So there is an ethical question. Should an artificial intelligence self-driving automobile kill the baby or the grandma if there is one choice? In 2014, a very important research has been done by the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Media Lab. And this experiment named Model Machine. The idea was to make a game-like platform which would crowdsource people's decisions on how self-driving cars should prioritize lives in different variants of this trolley problem. In the process, the information generated would provide insight into different cultures' collective priorities. So the researchers never called the viral reception of the experiment. Countless people in countries and territories have logged 40 million choices, which makes it one of the largest studies ever done on taste. 4 years after the stage went live. So I was reviewing some of the papers, and Nature is also a very important scientific paper, as you all know, ladies and gentlemen. So a new paper published in Nature, and this presents the analysis of the data and shows just how much cross-cultural ethics diverge on the grounds of culture, economics, and geographical location. As we told this, the trolley problem. The trolley problem goes like this. So you find a trolley speeding down the tracks, about to strike and kill 5 people. You got access to a lever which could switch the trolley to a track where a person would meet with an untimely death. If you pull on the lever and end one life, so the Model Machine took that idea to examine 9 unique comparisons revealed to polarized people. So this can be applied for the self-driving cars as well, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, let's ask this question. If a self-driving car prioritized through its artificial intelligence people over pets and animals, or pets over pedestrians, more lives more than fever, or women more than men, or young over old, or fit over ailing, or higher social standing over reduced, or low abiders over low benders. So, these are some of the questions that when you are actually teaching the artificial intelligence how to interact, as humans, we are giving this as an option. So how should the self-driving car react? Or should it continue and remain on track and do an inaction? Because it's like the lever. You either do it or you do an inaction. So there are many philosophical questions, but these are real questions that the humanity has to solve, because you have a choice. So instead of posing these comparisons, and in this research, when I looked into more detail, the participants were presented by the experiment, such as if a car swerved to a barricade or should continue straight ahead to kill 3 pedestrians. Very interesting. The researchers found that countries' preferences differ widely, but they correlate highly with economics and culture. So due to this finding, I was very surprised, because there was a greater emphasis on respecting the elderly. Participants in cultures such as Japan and China are inclined to spare the young over the old, and the researchers hypothesized by way of instance. And there were countries with more individualistic cultures that are more likely to spare the young. There were also a comparison of countries piloting self-driving cars. So if, let's say, one bar is closer to 1, respondents placed a greater emphasis on sparing the young people. And if the bar is closer to -1, the respondents placed a greater emphasis on sparing the elderly, the old people. And 0 is the global average. So participants in countries with weaker institutions are more tolerant of jaywalkers versus pedestrians who cross. And participants in countries with a high degree of inequality show differences involving the treatment of people with low and high social standing. And in what boils down to the trolley problems matter, the investigators discovered that the amount of people in the way of harm was the dominant element in choosing which group ought to be spared. The results revealed that participants from cultures such as the United States and the United Kingdom placed a stronger emphasis on rescuing lives given of the options in the author's perspectives. So due to the emphasis on each individual's word. But this study's authors highlighted that the results aren't intended to dictate different nations should behave. Sometimes, in actuality, these authors felt that policymakers and technologists should reevaluate the public opinion. An author of the over there, one of the Edmund Awad, who was actually an author of this newspaper, brought the status comparison up. It sounds concerning that people found it acceptable to a substantial degree to spare greater status over lower standing, he said. It is very important to say, hey, we can measure that, rather than saying, oh, maybe we should use this. So the results should be utilized by the governments and the industry as a basis for understanding how the people would respond to different policy and design decisions and integrity. So Awad is also hoping that the results will also help technologists think more profoundly about the integrity of the artificial intelligence past self-driving cars, because artificial intelligence touch everywhere, not just self-driving cars. We use the trolley problem since it's a really good way to accumulate this information, but we expect the discussion of ethics do not stay within that subject, he said. The discussion should proceed to risk analysis about who's at more risk or less risk, rather than saying who is going to die or not, and about how prejudice is occurring. So these results could translate to regulation of artificial intelligence. And the design is something that he hopes to research more. So in the past 2 to 3 years, more and more people have begun talking about the integrity and the ethics of artificial intelligence. More people, ladies and gentlemen, have started to become aware that artificial intelligence may have different ethical consequences on different groups of individuals. And the fact that we see people engaged with this, I believe that is something promising. So our third news is also about a very interesting security of internet. There is something called quantum entanglement over 30 miles of fiber. And this has brought a super secure internet closer. So quantum entanglement is something that the labs have tested and suggested a reliable quantum internet between cities might be possible. And Albert Einstein wanted nothing to do with it. He mocked the strange concept of quantum entanglement as spooky action at a distance. But 100 years on, Einstein's bugbear could help create a more secure internet, thanks to the most reliable technique yet for entangling nodes along miles of fiber optic cable. With entanglement, an object can be put into a quantum superposition of multiple states, like the Schrödinger's cat, both alive and dead at once. And that superposition can be shared with another object. In theory, these objects will maintain that connection even when separated, so that measuring one reveals the state of the other, no matter how far away. So I was very interested to see that more and more secure internet is being researched and using, this is not just a merely interest of the quantum physics, ladies and gentlemen. So a quantum internet would allow ultra-secure communication of sensitive messages. One technique is to encrypt a pair of digital keys, a technology known as quantum key distribution, QKD. So if two people both have these keys, they can actually talk without fear of being snooped on, because an eavesdropper would change the state of the keys and be found out. But QKD relies on measuring the state of the quantum, the encrypted keys. And since that measurement can be affected by conditions in the sending and receiving devices, you need to know their exact physical conditions. That can be impractical because even tiny physical fluctuations can throw off the measurements. That's why the oddities of quantum entanglement have been seized upon to form the basis of an ever better engagement and approach. So the entanglement is much, much harder to pull off. But in the long run, it could actually, ladies and gentlemen, provide a more useful quantum internet than quantum keys. So by entangling the nodes on a network, you set up a connection between the entangled particles that bypasses the devices themselves, avoiding the unrealistic requirement that you know their exact state, at least in principle. In practice, entanglement also requires ideal conditions. Quantum systems are sensitive to the tiniest disturbances. A change in temperature or a slight movement can throw everything off. A groundbreaking experiment in 2015 showed that quantum entanglement worked across a distance of just less than a mile, which is 1.3 kilometers. In the years since, researchers have separated entangled particles by sending them down optical fibers and even up to a satellite and back, but the reliability has been very low. In a paper in Nature Today, Pan Jianwei at the University of Science and Technology of China in Hefei and his colleagues describe an experiment in which they demonstrate entanglement through more than 30 miles of fiber coiled in a lab with lower transmission errors than previous attempts. So this is a big improvement, says Pan, who is sometimes called the father of quantum. The trick was to find efficient ways to entangle two particles. The team used an atom, which stayed put, and a photon, which was sent down the fiber. They found that they were able to create an entangled pair of nodes, which is much more reliably than that was demonstrated in the previous experiments, including the one setting the mile benchmark, which it beat by 5 orders of magnitude. How big a deal is this result, ladies and gentlemen? And it's a nice, but not nearly as big as it sounds, says Stephanie Weiner, a researcher at QTech, a quantum computing and quantum internet research center in Delft, in Netherlands. Pan's team used 30 miles of coiled fiber, which still demands an impressive degree of control over the whole system, but demonstrating entanglement between two nodes in one location is much easier than when they are actually 30 miles apart. But distance is one thing. Pan's team also claims that its setup is more reliable than previous examples and lays better groundwork for an actual quantum internet. Having demonstrated the techniques with a coiled fiber, he thinks they can readily extend them to work in a straight line. The methods developed in this work could be used to build quantum networks between cities in the near future. This is very exciting, ladies and gentlemen. Our fourth news is about Citroën. The giant important brand Citroën introduced a two-seat EV that costs only $19.99 a month. This Citroën MI is a new take on urban mobility. It's electric, cheap, and doesn't require a license. In short, it's less of a car and more of an electric scooter with two seats, doors and a heater. So, jokes aside, the Citroën MI could be a glimpse at the future of mobility. The innovation isn't in the technical aspects of MI. Citroën is positioning the MI as an urban mobility solution. The size is perfect for narrow streets and the price is right to be competitive against public transport. The MI is not classified as a motor vehicle. As such, operators do not need a license and can be as young as 14 in France and 16 in other European countries. passengers sit side by side in the heated compartment and under the panoramic roof. The 5.5K lithium-ion battery is housed under the floor and is good for up to 70 kilometers after a 3-hour charge from a standard 220-volt outlet. So the top speed is 45 kilometers per hour, which is 28 miles per hour. And because it's a Citroën, there is a nod to the company's quirky past. The side windows open manually by tilting upwards like the classic 2CV. And the MI is available to consumers in several different ways. It can be rented long-term at a cost of €19.99, including tax per month, with an initial payment of €2,644, including the tax. So the MI can be rented through a car sharing service for up to a day at a rate of only 26 cents per minute. Or the MI is available for purchase from €6,000, including the VAT. So Citroën is taking orders for the MI starting on March 30th, 2020 in France and several months later in Spain, Italy, Belgium, Portugal, and then Germany. The first MI vehicles are expected to be ready by June. Our last news, ladies and gentlemen, is about emissions possible. So the emissions, as you know, are very important. And the streaming music is actually swells carbon footprints. So when we looked at a popular reggaeton hit from Fonsi and Daddy Yankee, they became the most widely streamed record of all time, with a version featuring Canadian superstar Justin Bieber, helping the tune to more than 4.6 billion plays since it was released in the January of that year. A decade ago, reggaeton would have been an unlikely choice of genre for the most popular song on the planet, played in clubs and radio stations and in dance classes everywhere. With the broadening appeal of previously niche tastes, just one aspect in which the music industry has fundamentally changed with the spread of streaming technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, this covers our show. I'm really thrilled that we are able to talk about, very interesting music and other ways of technologies as well, because the Tencent music's revenues find their groove with more paying users. And the growth of streaming has another often overlooked impact. It is directly contributing to the environmental degradation, even as the environmental byproducts of producing physical products such as clunky CD players or racks full of vinyls has decreased. So a group of researchers from the European Commission, led by Dr. Rabi Bashroush, found that those 4.6 billion streams of Despacito had used as much electricity as the combined annual electricity consumption of Chad, Guinea-Bissau, Somalia, Sierra Leone, and the Central African Republic. Isn't it crazy? So the greenhouse gas emissions of video on-demand services such as Netflix and Amazon Prime are equivalent to the emissions of a country such as Chile, according to the Shift Project, a French think tank which has published several reports advocating for digital sobriety. This body of research is starting to swell as consumers and companies alike start to reckon with their environmental impact in other areas. Let's watch this very interesting video and then close the show. I want to thank you again. You have a wonderful rest of the week, and make sure to connect with Dr. Yavuz Selim Sılay, your host at 5 Technology News. Take care.
The hardest thing is the flying side of things. We're taking time over the next year or two to work out how can not only our tour be sustainable, but how can it be actively beneficial? How can we harness the resources that our tour creates and make it have a positive impact? Our dream is to have a show with no single-use plastic, to have it be largely solar powered. So I think it's a question of just accepting that you have to do your best, not to be too overzealous in criticizing others, because everyone will catch up if you prove that it's easy to do it the right way.
So what way has the BBC website influenced this album?
Well, I don't want this to seem like but I don't mind saying, I think that although I don't really know where the music comes from, I think it's floating around or whatever, sometimes if you're reading and you're looking, these little blooms of things that you feel might be great to sing about appear, and on your website is a lot of them. Well, actually, it's funny, there was an article on the BBC website, which is what I look at a lot. In fact, they always have these amazing human interest pieces. And there was a piece on there called The Gardener of Kabul, about this guy from Kabul who had been a gardener and was trying to get back and grow flowers and plants and everything. And I just thought, you know, the circumstances that this guy has experienced are not unique to him, and it could have happened to me or it could have happened to you. So anyway, that was kind of brewing, and then this song Orphans arrived, just thinking about all these young people who are displaced and they get labeled as refugees or migrants, but ultimately they're just young people who want to get on with their lives. And I think that's what the song Orphans is about, and just imagining what that experience might be like. To find these individual stories all around the world just reinforces what I'm talking about, of our shared humanity rather than our separate, you know, nationalism or stuff that I don't actually believe in.